Yeah, I was about to ask them to close that door. And close the outside door too, please, because it's going to be too much noise. All right, Alicia, before you come in, can you lock excited? It's going to be great. All right, whenever you're ready. All right, fantastic. Welcome to River of Life. Welcome to this VVCU event. We are Visitation Valley Community Unity. My name is Robert Cowan. I'm the pastor of River of Life, located here in the Sunnydale, Visitation Valley area. I am so happy and pleased that Aaron Peskin is with me today, Supervisor Peskin, who is running for mayor of San Francisco. Let me tell you, before we get too deep into it, VVCU is an organization of people who come together, leaders in Visitation Valley, to give voice to Visitation Valley residents. Yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, you should have a card. If you want to ask questions, please write it down and hand it to Miss Edith back there, the big smiling face standing, and she will take the card, and if we have time, we'll get to those questions. All right. I think that's it. I've said everything, and so we're going to just give you an opportunity, sir, to make an opening statement before we get to the actual questions.
Thank you, Pastor Cowan, for your leadership, not only at River of Life, but at VVCU. And thank you for doing this. Democracy really only works if people are able to learn about the candidates. So holding this forum and all of your attending, I greatly appreciate. And thanks for spending a little bit of your precious Sunday listening to questions about leadership. I'm also really here to hear from you and hear what Viz Valley wants to say to me, both as a supervisor as well as a candidate to be the next mayor of the city and county of San Francisco. By way of a little bit of background, I never expected to get into politics. I wasn't one of those kids who was involved in student government in high school. I don't come from here. I was just having this conversation with Pastor Cowan. I come from the East Bay. I was born and raised in Berkeley, California in the 1960s. I went to the first fully integrated public school class from K through 12 in the Berkeley Public Schools. And I was just showing off my claim to fame to Pastor Cowan which is that I went to kindergarten, first, second, and third grade with Kamala Harris. I don't mean the same school. I mean Mrs. Rader's kindergarten class, Mrs. Wilson's first grade class, Mrs. Hotta's second grade class, and Mrs. Jones's third grade class. And I just showed Pastor Cowan the pictures to prove it, which is all by way of saying our early childhood and how we were raised really informs who we become in our lives. And my father was raised in New York by immigrant parents who escaped Europe right before the Holocaust. Good timing. He was the only kid in his family to go to college. He went to City College in New York, did pretty well, got on a one-way Greyhound bus to go to graduate school in UC Berkeley, and then was promptly shipped to Korea by his draft board, and he was still pissed off about that to his dying day. But he did finish his degree, and then he got a job at San Francisco State, and he taught at San Francisco State for 42 years, and I still bump into his students all over the streets of San Francisco. My mother's a social worker. She is alive and well. She's still at the age of 84, works 4 days a week. And when I was growing up, she ran the East Oakland Youth and Family Center for troubled kids, truancy, delinquency, helping families, get it together. And that's the family I was raised in. I was raised in a family of healers. I did not, like my parents, get into that. I actually, for a living, worked at the Trust for Public Land in downtown San Francisco, starting in the 1980s, buying land for parks and open space in inner cities and all around the Western United States. And I guess I had too much time on my hands because I got involved in my version of VVCU, which is the neighborhood group in North Beach. And I got radicalized, believe it or not, by a tree planting. We got a challenge in the late 1990s to plant 300 trees, and we had like 100 days to do it. And I helped organize that effort. And then I got very involved in my neighborhood organization. At that time, the economy was superheated. There were a lot of evictions. That corner of the city has Chinatown and North Beach. And I was able to work with tenant activists, bringing folks from Chinatown and North Beach together to oppose a series of unjust evictions that were sweeping around at that time. One thing led to another, and in the year 2000, my neighbors encouraged me to put my name on the ballot to run for supervisor. I had never run for anything in my life. I thought I had a few things to say, but that I wouldn't win. Lo and behold, I won that race, and that was 24 years ago. And I took to politics. I was let's be real. I learned at the taxpayer's expense, because when I got in there, I did not know the breadth of public policy. I knew a little bit about buying land for parks. And I had two parents who knew a little bit about social work and psychology and community. And I knew a little bit about eviction protections. But I didn't know anything about tax policy. I didn't know anything about our water delivery system. I didn't know how we built affordable housing. I didn't know what a general obligation bond was. I didn't know any of that stuff. I didn't know all the policies that deal with our port and our airport. But I got to learn that over 8 years at your expense. Thank you for paying me. And in my second term, something that hasn't happened in quite a number of years, my colleagues, those who were more politically moderate than me, those that were more politically progressive than me, all agreed on one thing, which is that I bring people together, and they elected me unanimously, uncontested, by acclamation, president of the Board of Supervisors in the year in 2005. And I guess I didn't upset them too badly, because in 2007, they unanimously elected me again. And then my 8 years was up. We have term limits, 2 4-year terms. And I thought to myself, that was a pretty neat chapter in my life. I was honored to do it, made a lot of connections, helped a lot of people, and went back to buying parks for people. Did a lot of work with native tribes in Nevada. And then in 2015, through a weird, unexpected quirk of fate, which was that my successor, David Chu, who's now the city attorney, ran for a position, and I'll wrap up, Pastor, ran for a position in the state assembly, and it left a vacancy on the board. And when we have a vacancy on our 11-member board of supervisors, we don't have a special election like they do in most places. The mayor appoints the vacancy. And I don't know what Ed Lee was thinking, and he's no longer, God rest his soul, going to be able to tell us, but he appointed somebody that the good people of Chinatown and the good people of North Beach and the good people of the Upper Tenderloin were not pleased with. And people came banging on my door and said, hey, come out of your self-imposed retirement and run again. I was like, no, that chapter is done. Anyway, I eventually said yes, and that was 9 years ago. So I am now a supervisor who has served 17 of the last 24 years. I have more experience and more time on the Board of Supervisors since some guy named Dewey Mead died in 1954. I have served under 4 mayors. I have brought people together, and I was not a year ago thinking about running for mayor, but I looked at the choices and I thought we need somebody who cares, somebody who has experience, somebody who has a vision, somebody who can bring people together. And on April the 6th of this year, I put my hat in the ring, and I am honored to be here and would love to hear from Viz Valley as to what you see as your vision that I can help implement.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So let's talk about safety. I know it's a big deal in San Francisco, and I will say that in Visitacion Valley, there's pretty serious divide in terms of how to approach it. A little while ago, there was a wave against the mass incarceration that Black people have suffered. And so that they passed a proposition, and in response to that, with the George Floyd issues and all of that, Chester Boudin was elected and then recalled because that pendulum swung the other way, as it normally does. And my understanding, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is that even during the recall, you backed Chester Boudin in that. And so, if you would, tell us about that, why you backed them, and what would you have Visitacion Valley residents know about what your stand is in safety?
Yeah. Thank you for that question, Pastor Cowan. Let me start with this, which is one of the most important things that a government does, whether it's a local government, whether it's a national government, is to keep people safe, and not only be safe, but to feel safe. I mean, you don't have a community or a city that works when people are afraid to go outside. And I have always said that public safety is a progressive value. It is one of the most important things that a government can provide. And in the corner of the city that I've had the honor and pleasure of representing for most of the last quarter of a century, let me say a few things. When I first arrived, we did not have culturally competent policing. The officers in Chinatown didn't speak a word of Cantonese. We did not have real community policing. They did not know the names of their shopkeepers or the folks who hung out and were the regulars in the park. And I insisted with the community together that this department hire folks who could speak the language, who came from the community. And today, you can walk the streets of Chinatown and you will see Sergeant Colbert, too, who comes from this city and speaks the language, and William Ma and Talent Tang and Curran Gong. And they not only make people feel safe, they make them feel safe because there's real community policing. And I think we have seen a sea change in American urban policing, where we have gone from a history of impunity and brutality, and I'm not talking about just San Francisco, I'm talking about this country, to modern 21st century policing. And by the way, it has not been ubiquitously embraced by law enforcement, and it's been different in different cities, but there is a long history, and I'm very proud of San Francisco. I'm very proud of our last mayor, this mayor, my colleagues on the board, our current chief of police, for sticking to the need to reform and become a 21st century police department. I am also very cognizant of the history of inequality in criminal justice in our country, and we are not an exception to that, which is why notions of different ways of making the public safe are things that I think as a society we need to entertain. That does not mean defunding the police. That does not mean abandoning public safety, but it means thinking in new ways. I mean, I remember when I was early on in the early 2000s, there was a wave of homicides, and we got right up to the magic number of 100 homicides. And interestingly enough, in those days, the Mayor Brown was the mayor. It was right as Newsom was starting. There was a negotiation between the Board of Supervisors and the mayor that we would invest in violence prevention strategies, that we would invest in job strategies. All of that is public safety too. So public safety, yes, is traditional law enforcement with reforms, and public safety is also, I mean, the best way to stop crime is to give people a job. That is the values that I was raised with, right? And so when it comes to Mr. Boudin, I felt that his original campaign around bringing those thoughts and those policies to the criminal justice system were important. And by the way, in my personal interactions with him, in going to meetings like this, the sense that I got from him, and I'm not a lawyer, and if I was a lawyer, I wouldn't be a criminal lawyer, but or a public defender, not my deal. But the sense that I got was that he was a rational, caring person who believed in law enforcement, believed in criminal justice, but wanted to pioneer new ways. And I felt that the recall, which was obviously successful, demonized those new ways that offered our society hope. And so I knew what the poll said. The poll said he was going to lose. But I knew what my principles and values said. And I wanted to stand up, not for lawlessness, I wanted to stand up for reform of a system that doesn't work well and that has been inequitable, that has incarcerated more people of color, many of them for crimes that aren't violent crimes. I mean, this whole notion that we have people who are serving long sentences because they have lives that have led them to drug use and drug abuse, where they're hurting themselves more, and maybe they're hurting their families, not physically. But we got to rethink that. And so that's why I stood for that. And I have no regrets about that. I also point out to people that over $10 million was spent recalling him. And it was a 55-45 recall. I mean, that's not 70-30, that's not 80-20. It was 55-45. And I think that his thoughts are still thoughts that shouldn't go away, that we should still be, as an open society, thinking about.
Right. I appreciate that. Thank you for that response. Yeah, I have some real feelings about that, but I'm not going to introduce them right now. So let me
We can take those offline, Pastor.
Yeah. All right, so kind of pivoting.
Can I just say one other thing? The impacts of the murder of George Floyd that we all got to see over and over and over again have also led to something that is not unique to San Francisco. It is true of police departments around this country, which is a lot less folks want to become cops now. So this has become a new area that politicians are exploiting for their own political goals, which is the streets are unsafe because we have a shortage of cops. It is true that we need to hire a few hundred cops. We traditionally have had at the high, about 1,900 full sworn officers in San Francisco. And it is true that today we have about 1,600. And my colleagues or the other contestants in this race are running around saying that we're 600 short. All of that notwithstanding, we have the same problems that LA has, that Seattle has, in hiring cops, because people are going like, I'm not sure I want to do that anymore. I mean, I think part of our collective responsibility is to change the view of policing and change policing to make that a more attractive profession. And one of the things that I have been pushing and exploring is a way to get folks from our communities through our educational institutions with peace officer training to work in the town that they were raised in, where they know their neighborhoods. And they're not against their neighborhoods. They're not an occupying force, but they are actually, they know their grandmas and they know their shopkeepers. And so I've been working on a program to offer forgivable student loans to folks to go to school, to get a job as a police officer at the San Francisco Police Department. And the longer they stay, the more of their loan that we will forgive. And I think that's got a lot of promise.
Okay.
Sorry for.
And so it's going to be a city ordinance that you're trying to.
Yes, everything is always very complicated. It turned out I had this great idea, and then it turned out that because of federal tax law, they were going to get taxed on the money we gave to forgive the loan. So it's taken me 3 months to figure out a way to get around it, because you don't want to give them a loan forgiveness and then they have to pay taxes on it. So anyway, I finally figured out it was a lot of brain damage, but
okay.
Yeah.
So let me ask this question: how would you approach safety in Visitacion Valley differently than you approach it perhaps in the rest of the city?
Let me confess my ignorance. I have to ask you about that. I really have to. I need to know more. I'll tell you one thing about running for this position. I mean, we all live where we live and we have our routines. And yes, being a citywide supervisor and president of the board 3 times has brought me to many parts of the city. But the one thing that I've learned is I need to learn more. And so I really look to VVCU and leaders in the community to tell me how that would be different here.
Okay, I appreciate that. In November 2022, you may remember it was in the news, a man was suffering from some kind of mental health crisis up at 7-Eleven. He beat up a few people and he actually beat to death a 73-year-old man. On Leland Avenue, which is a commercial corridor around.
I know.
There are people wandering around with all kinds of mental health issues. And so, what specific plans do you have to address the mental health issues of people on the streets?
So let me say this about that, and I say this as the son of 2 mental health professionals, which is there's a lot of people in crisis. There's a lot of people who have very serious mental illness, and people who can not take care of themselves, people who are a danger to themselves or to others. I think we have an obligation to conserve them until they are better. And I know that that is very controversial and people say you're violating people's civil rights and what have you. But I think if you are displaying certain types of behavior until you are better, it is our obligation to take you off the street and treat you. And by the way, that is not just San Francisco. This is a regional problem. This is a statewide problem. And the reason I'm saying that is I think that we are better when we are together, which is to say that we have historically in San Francisco gone it alone. We'll solve our own problems. Well, we're not doing such a great job. My response is let us get together with our brother and sister mayors in San Jose and in Oakland and in Berkeley and tap into those Prop 1 state dollars that just passed. And let's stand up some regional behavioral health facilities where we can actually take folks. And if you are as old as I am, I just turned 60 last month, you will remember that Ronald Reagan, when he was governor, blew up all of our infrastructure around behavioral health. And you want to know what? Those places are still there. Those underutilized and unused state facilities still exist. Let's get together as a region. Let's stand those places back up. So this whole notion of, well, we can't send them to General because General's full, true. Let's get together as a region. Let's stop thinking that this is just San Francisco's problem. And let's go repurpose some of those unused or underutilized state facilities and conserve those individuals until they're better.
So you're talking about a public conservative?
Yes, sir.
Got it. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's something. All right, so let's see. Regarding safety again, uh, we know that there's cameras coming on board, red light cameras, but also we have the license plate readers, and we have the ubiquitous Big Brother everywhere. Um, and so my question is this: how do you balance privacy rights against safety concerns, given all of these technological advancements?
This happens to be my sweet spot, Pastor Cowan. So I'm not afraid of new things. I am not afraid of utilizing new technologies to advance our society and our city. But I am scared of the government having all of your personal DNA, being able to figure out where you went and what you looked at and where you drove your car around, particularly, at the federal level, where God only knows if this guy gets elected in November, God willing it doesn't happen, that you've got a federal government. And this happened in Nazi Germany. They knew who people were, and that was the early advent of the computer. And my response to that is the government has to tell the people what it's got, how it's using it, and that has to be done in the light of day. And actually, a number of years ago, I became increasingly concerned about the accumulation of various types of surveillance technology. And I passed a law, which, by the way, and I mean her no ill will, my mayor does not like, Section 19B of our administrative code. And Section 19B of the administrative code says that before any department can purchase or utilize any surveillance technology, they have to come up with a little thing that they have to bring to the Board of Supervisors. And by the way, you'll see these, they're on our calendars all the time, saying what the technology does, how much it costs to operate it, what kind of data it collects, who the data is shared with, how long the data is stored, and the Board of Supervisors get to vote yes or no. Okay? And it's interesting because, by the way, there are departments that you would not even think of that have surveillance technology. And some of the things that you don't even think of as surveillance technology are surveillance technology. It turns out that if you make a reservation to use a rec and park facility to play a game of tennis, it's surveillance technology. They know who you are. They know when you're on the court because you've got to turn on your location device, and they had to bring that to the Board of Supervisors. And then, interestingly enough, a bunch of tennis players showed up to the Board of Supervisors and said, hey, we're not cool with that. So this is now all being done in the light of day. And we had another one where the department came along and said, oh, we share this data with the district attorney's office. And I said, whoa. If you're going to share it with the district attorney's office, you must put in your plan that it is equally available to the public defender's office. And they said, oh, okay, we'll do that. So, and all of this, you can come to these.
Who was that?
What was that?
Who was that was sharing with them?
I'm trying to think. We have now approved 13 of these different policies since I passed 19B of the code 4 years ago. So there's been a lot of them that have come. I believe that was a surveillance policy of the sheriff's office, I believe, but don't quote me on that. After you hit 100, you forget which one's which. But all of that is done in the light of day. And you want to know what? I think that makes us safer because people know and people have an opportunity to come down. And organizations do too. The American Civil Liberties Union, other organizations keep an eye on this stuff. There's actually an organization called, Mike, what's it called? Clear Justice. Clear Justice. And Clear Justice actually comes down and comments on each and every one of these proposals.
Second.
Let there be light.
Thank you. All right, so if we wanted to get that information, we would go down to
Yeah, it's all available on the Committee on Information Technology, COIT, website. And if you need a link, I can get it to you.
I will find it.
And by the way, since we passed that in San Francisco, there have been governments all around the country who have been copying that. And that was my legislation. I'm very proud of it.
Fantastic. All right, so let me ask you about Leland Avenue.
66.
No, the whole corridor. Yeah. So the question, if you go up and down the street, there are storefronts that are not open. Lots of area for improvement. So my question is, give us a few ways how you would revitalize Leland Avenue.
Yeah. So let me start with this, which is we had the controller is the position in government that literally controls the spending of money. And there used to be a guy who had that job. I've been around now for 3 different controllers because I've been around for a long time, who used to say to me, Aaron, there is an endless amount of need and a limited amount of resource. Okay. And I always think about that because all the choices that you make are choices.
Yeah.
You can spend it here, you can spend it there, or if you're some of my mayors, you just don't spend it at all. But the reason I say this is we are in a moment, and the moment is a difficult moment. And what happened in San Francisco during and after the pandemic is that our downtown, the goose that lays the golden egg, all of a sudden it was booming, and then it busted, and it busted big time, and it busted more than the rest of downtown cities busted. And the reason for that was a couple, 3 different reasons. One is we had encouraged, we the city had encouraged tech, and so it was kind of a monoculture. And in the old days, it was all business, but it was a more diverse set of businesses. And no, I'm getting to Leland.
Okay.
And here, so when it was all said and done, we have now 18 million vacant square feet of downtown office, 37% vacancy rate. And all this government thinks about is using that limited amount of resource to make downtown recover. And my response is no. The neighborhoods are actually where the action is. It's actually the small businesses that employ the majority of workers in the city. It is the place that people live. It is the place that people raise their families. So my answer to Leland is we need SF Shine grants. We need business development grants. We need legacy business grants. All of those things are now being diverted to vacant to vibrant, 110,000 hours, I kid you not, of police overtime at Union Square last year. By the way, we're down 300 cops, but we actually are spending as much cop time as we did before we were down 300 cops because it's all being done through overtime. So you actually have the same amount of hours of policing. It's just being done more expensive with overtime. I mean, don't get me wrong. I want to hire those cops. Don't bring our costs down. But the reason I'm telling you this is it's time for this government not to forget the neighborhoods that are under extreme pressure. And that requires resource. And the resource is we want to do business development grants. We want to do job opportunity grants. We want to do summer employment grants. And that stuff is all being shifted downtown. I understand we're freaked out about downtown. And yes, it's the goose that lays the golden egg, but not at the expense of the Leland corridor. That's my response.
So you said sunshine?
Those are grants for facade restorations that the city gives to fix a neon sign, to put up a new awning, to improve the facade of a business, and they're really important.
Yeah. Okay, I appreciate it. All right, so
It's called SF Shines.
SF Shines. You kind of brought into the neighborhoods. I want to talk about that because as I was doing some research to prepare for this, I saw the term upzoning and deregulation used as a phrase. So could you please, one, define those as it's being used, particularly in reference to you, because you're not going for it, as I understand it, and then give us your spill on that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, I'll be short. So zoning so zoning is the planning code, which is how high you can build, what you can put there. Can you put industrial, manufacturing, office, commercial, residential? Can you put in one house on a single lot? Can you put in 4 units on a single lot? All of that is zoning. Upzoning is adding more of something. So upzoning could be making the heights higher. Upzoning could be you have 10 units per lot instead of 1 unit per lot. Upzoning could be, by the way, we want more industrial development. And so these are laws that the city, says our residential goes here, or, industrial goes there. And the current political atmosphere is we must add more housing in San Francisco, and therefore we must raise heights. That's the conversation that's going on. And my response is, yeah, but we got to do it with the neighborhoods, not against the neighborhoods. And it's just that simple, which is I'm the one who keeps going like, no. We don't tell them that their neighborhood's going to be 120 feet high. We ask them and we talk to them and we see what they want. And by the way, I have done that over the last 25 years until this whole moment of deregulation means we'll build 100,000 units, which means the price will go down, which is a bunch of hogwash. My whole thing has been, let's talk. What do you guys want? Oh, you want a park. You want a complete neighborhood. You want trees. You want a police outpost. You want a new school. You want childcare. Okay, let's build that into the plan. That has always been my MO. So now when I stand, and by the way, that was my MO when we did the Eastern Neighborhoods rezoning in 2007, which I presided over and put my name on. That was my MO when I was working with Sophie Maxwell on the shipyard. That was my MO when I was working with Jane Kim on Rincon Hill. But all of a sudden, that makes you like the anti-housing guy. I'm not the anti-housing guy. I'm the pro-neighborhood guy. And I believe that we can solve our housing problems without turning Ocean Beach into Miami Beach.
Yeah, we got a notice where I live. I told you I live on Caseta. We got a notice that they were planning to build a 6-story apartment right in the same block. Like you said, it was just a real regular single-family homes, and we were about to go down and protest because that's ridiculous. But anyway, nothing came of it. So.
And the other question is, who are we doing this for, right? And so I keep asking the question, and then the developers and their YIMBY shock troops go like, well, you're anti-housing. I have never voted against an affordable housing project of any kind, ever. Unlike, by the way, some of my competitors in this race, particularly the one who used to represent Pacific Heights and the Marina, who voted against a homeless shelter in his district, voted against affordable housing in his district. I welcomed with open arms a transitional age youth navigation. I didn't just welcome it with open arms. I went and found the site. I found the money. There are 83 kids who are, high-risk kids who are now in that facility and getting the help that they need. And during the pandemic, we got hundreds of units of permanent supportive housing for folks that need it. So the question about housing is, housing for who? I'm not really interested in $2,000 a square foot condominium luxury towers. Those guys will figure out how to make those happen. That's not my problem. My problem is housing for people who work here, people who live here, people who want to be raised in the same community and have their kids and their grandkids be able to live here. That's the housing that I'm interested in.
So let me ask you, do you know how upzoning is being planned besides the construction in Sunnyvale? Do you know if there's any upzoning being planned for Visitacion Valley?
I believe, and I would have to go back because we're a big city, the answer is no. I don't believe so. But what has happened is that the state of California has increasingly taken away our local powers over upzoning. So more and more, there was a bill that our own state senator Scott Wiener passed, Senate Bill 423, which basically allows developers to build whatever they want, wherever they want, as long as it's got 11%, 12% affordable housing. So less and less is this coming to your elected local board of supervisors.
Okay. All right. So let me ask this. Let's talk about Snedge Law.
And just one other thing about this, which is when you do these things, you got to learn from history. We must not make the mistake that we made in redevelopment in the Western Addition and Japantown. That was a tragedy. And the reason that we still have certificates of preference is because we are still making up for that disaster that happened probably when I was a little kid, right? And so when you start talking about upzoning, and all of a sudden, what happens with upzoning? You take a piece of land that used to be able to accommodate 3 units, and you say it can accommodate 10 units, it becomes more valuable. The second you add that additional right, it becomes more valuable. Great. I don't want the people that live there to be kicked out. So my job is to take care of the people, and by the way, the small businesses that we love and that we rely on, and that, you know, people make a living at, and that are part of the fabric of our communities. I don't want them being evicted. So everything that you're reading about is me sticking up for people.
All right. So Snedge Law has been grounded
Little Hollywood
for a long time. What would you do to move it forward?
So we've done some of that, which is in the year 2001, which is a long time ago. I was the co-author of a piece of legislation that said if you wanted to build market rate development, you had to build a percentage of on-site affordable housing. And here's the problem with the moment that we are in. The cost of money, interest, loans is too expensive. So the reason right now, just as we sit here, there are 71,000 approved units of housing that have been through the process, went through the planning department, went through the building department, and they're not being built because interest rates are too high. And then the discussion that we're having at City Hall is, well, we've got to add more zoning, more zoning, more zoning. Well, that doesn't make interest any cheaper, and we don't control interest. But it turns out that your government can issue tax-exempt bonds. And we've never had this conversation. So instead of having this big fight about where we can turn your property into 100 feet or your third and Casada 6-story building or whatever, I started exploring whether we can actually use our municipal bonding authority to get cheaper money, lower interest money. And the answer is yes. And that piece of legislation, believe it or not, is being heard by our Board of Supervisors this coming Tuesday. And we will be able to provide both for-profit and nonprofit housing developers interest or loans that are 1% to 2% cheaper than what they can get from a conventional bank. And that is actually going to be an opportunity for Little Hollywood. That's going to be an opportunity for a whole bunch of these projects that are stuck in the pipeline because interest rates are too high.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so how would you allocate resources to improve services for Visitacion Valley residents?
I mean, this goes back to listening, really, which is, I think, Viz Valley and other neighborhoods have historically been left out of the conversation by mayors who have disproportionately concentrated on downtown and, you know, where the action and excitement is. My vision for San Francisco is a vision of a city that takes care of the places that have been ignored the most, that deserve the most. And many of them are in the Southeast. They're not all in the Southeast, but let's talk about the Tenderloin. The Tenderloin has been treated as a containment zone, and it unacceptable. You don't see that in Pacific Heights. You don't see that in the Marina. You don't see that on Nob Hill. What is allowed to happen in the Tenderloin is really abject ignorance by the government and want to deal with it. Same thing I think is true for Viz Valley, which is I want to be a mayor who says to Viz Valley, you're not the forgotten part of the city. You're actually, it's your time now. And I want to do that in conjunction with your supervisor.
All right, so we hear the El Dorado Elementary School is
up for closure.
And actually, D10 has some of the worst performing schools in the state. And so, just what are your thoughts?
I don't know, honestly. And the reason I am a product of K through 12 public education. I have historically and today opposed privatization of our public schools. That's what the billionaires want. I think it is terrible. That's what Donald Trump has already said he's going to do if he becomes president. But I'm also not, as a member of the Board of Supervisors, in any way involved in the school district. The school district has its own elected board. They get their money from the state. I want to be I think the city of San Francisco can and should be a better partner and friend and collaborator with the school district to see how we can help them. But I honestly don't have any real answers for that.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for your honesty. Let's see, low income in San Francisco is about 100 grand. And the rest of the country is like 12,000, 25,000. So here's the question. Do you have a plan to increase home ownership for San Francisco's low income?
Yeah, so let me first of all say that number that Pastor Cowan just gave you is a number, but it's not a true number. And the reason I say that is I'm the supervisor for Chinatown, where there are a lot of people who are they don't even make it to the definition of extremely low income. Okay. And I'm sure there are people in this community that the same thing is true for. The reason we get that number is there's this thing called the area median income, which is what you're talking about. And it really disproportionately affects San Francisco because our area median income is calculated using Marin County and San Mateo County, which is why you get this ridiculous thing that does not reflect the population of San Francisco. So that number is like a false number. But it is the number that we are required. A better number is, and we tried this, and I tried this, and it didn't work. I admit it was a failure, which is to create a San Francisco income. But we weren't smart enough to do it because it's the federal government who gives us those calculations. And I wanted to do a San Francisco area median income, which would bring those numbers down, which would be helpful with affordable housing. But let me get to your answer about the way we build intergenerational wealth is through home ownership. And yes, San Francisco is a city that actually, unlike most cities in America, is predominantly rental. That does not build intergenerational wealth. And the answer to that is, I think that San Francisco should have and should encourage the conversion of rental units to home ownership units if people aren't being evicted. So I don't want speculators coming in, buying stuff up, kicking everybody out, and then turning them into condos so that they can get rich. But if you have apartment people who are long-term tenants who want to buy those units and then pass them on to their, next of kin or what have you, and build that intergenerational wealth, that I think is the model. And in new construction, how you make things that are affordable but allow that intergenerational wealth is worth exploring. Because the reason I say it's a little complicated is when you make something affordable and you buy it, there's still an affordability restriction on when you sell it, so you're not making that intergenerational wealth, right? So we've got to figure out how to deal with it.
Right. Okay. Boy, there's so many topics. I have so many things to ask you. But our time is winding up, even though we did start 5 minutes late. What is Transit First? And are you a proponent of Transit First? And how often do you ride uni and or your bicycle?
I do not have a bicycle, so that would be 0. I did, by the way, just so that you know, ride my bicycle, which is still sitting at my mother's house, from here to our nation's capital. It took me 53 days. I did that at the age of 18. I rode all the way across America on my bicycle, and then I never got on it again. I am a big consumer of a portion of the bus that runs outside within my district, the 8. I am a regular user of the 49, the 45, the 30 in my district. So I hop on a bus like almost every day. It's like it's a red carpet ride from where I live to Chinatown, to downtown, to City Hall. So I'm on buses a lot. What Transit First means to me, and our public transit is the great equalizer. It means having a bus system and a public transportation system that works for everybody, that accesses every corner of this city, that is safe to ride on, that is well funded, that is clean. That is what Transit First means to me. That doesn't mean that you get rid of the car, because there are a lot of us who cannot go to work without a car, and it doesn't. And particularly, actually, working people are reliant on cars in ways that some people who are of higher means are not. So there's as with all things, Pastor, balance is important.
Okay. All right, I appreciate it. All right, I'm being prompted.
Actually, the supervisor can stay up until 2:20 at the latest.
Okay.
2:25.
So why are you guys gathering?
Questions?
Oh.
No, when we stop taking questions,
There's a lot.
I would love to answer questions, and Pastor, I really appreciate your questions, and felt real comfortable being here. So really appreciate it. Yeah.
All right. So just give me 1 second. I'm gonna.
And if anybody wants to see my first grade picture with Kamala Harris, come up after.
Hilarious. All right, I'm going to ask 2 questions, and then I'll turn it over. You're going to ask the questions? All right, fantastic. 2 questions for me.
You know, Jessica works around the corner from
me. Yeah. Jessica.
She gets around.
Yeah.
She'll be running for
powerful.
she'll be running for mayor in 4 years.
Exactly. I was going to say something like that. All right, so the air in San Francisco is far more smoggy and polluted than when I was a kid. You used to have to go all the way to Los Angeles to find smog like this. And so my question is, because you might think that all these electric cars even make it better. Do you have a solution to this crazy smog?
So let me start with a little bit of history, which is the history of environmental injustice, particularly in the southeast corner of this city, is pretty much criminal. And when I was elected in the year 2000, and my constituents were worried about this and that, your supervisor, Sophie Maxwell, came to me and said, I would like to team up, and can we work together on closing the 2 plants in the district? One was the Bayview plant, and the other was the Potrero plant. And for those of you who do not know, her son tragically died of lung cancer. The asthma rates with 2 freeways and 2 power plants were off the charts. And we were able to close the Bayview plant. Mayor Brown was very cooperative around that. But the Potrero plant, the company that owned it, not only didn't want to shut it down, they wanted to expand it with a project called Unit Number 7. And Sophie and I threw everything that we had at that thing. And the state of California said it had to be expanded. You will recall at the turn of this century, there was this whole thing about rolling power outages, which turned out to be the industry was gaming the system, and and people went to jail, but it took a long time to figure that out. There was a manufactured electricity crisis. They had to expand the Morant plant. Sophie and I were able to stop Unit Number 7, but then they wouldn't close it down, and they claimed that San Francisco did not have enough electrical reliability. We were able to enter into a deal to build a cable under the bay that now goes to Pittsburgh, California, that proved that we had enough electrical capacity and reliability in San Francisco. And the Morant plant was closed in 2005. It is one of the things I am the proudest of my years in office, and that Sophie and I have a sacred bond over. And that has led to a decrease in the amount of particulate matter, PM10s and PM50s. It has reduced the elevated asthma rates, so it's already had impacts. So I just wanted to say a little bit of history on, I'm very proud of that moment of restoring some environmental justice. As to the larger issue of a growing Bay Area with industrial, with car pollution, et cetera, the Bay Area Air Quality Management District has, I think, got to step it up. And yes, electric vehicles and scrubbers on smokestacks and all the stuff that's happening in Martinez and all that when the winds are right, affects Bay Area smog and particulate matter. We need to clamp down on it, and we've got to change the way we do business. And it's unhealthy for 7 million people in the Bay Area.
All right, so a specific plan right now you don't have.
No, sir.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna yield.
But if you have ideas, Pastor, I'm always.
I just hate to drive into the city and see it.
I will tell you, in my district, when we opened up a cruise ship terminal, we actually were one of the first cities in America to require that the cruise ships turn off and plug into shoreside electricity so that all that pollution is not coming out over North Beach and Chinatown. But there's got to be a lot more like that.
Got to be. All right. Come on up, Jessica.
Only ask nice questions, Jessica, please.
Thank you, Pastor Cohen. So there are 15 questions. So I know you're very comfortable, Supervisor.
We'll see how long I remain comfortable.
But now we're going to play a game called 15 questions in 15 minutes.
All right, I'll do it. 1 minute.
So,
1 minute. 1 minute. 1 minute.
All right, ready? Ready, Russell? Okay.
All right, Russell, go.
Well, we're going to do this game.
Okay, go.
Okay, all right. Okay. How will you advocate for African Americans who were constantly being pushed out of the city? How will you advocate for equality for us that are constantly fighting for housing, jobs, reparations, and policies that affect us directly?
Move money, make those choices, stop spending it all downtown, move it around to the communities that deserve it the most, that have the history of neglect that needs to be addressed. No, it is time for communities that have long been empowered, that have long been knocking on City Hall's doors, to be listened to and brought into the fold. It's high time. And by the way, I'm the only person running for mayor who is not beholden to any of the billionaires or special interests. I'm the only one. And they're coming after me with a stick.
All right. What is your vision for increasing the life chances of Black youth in Hope SF sites?
Hope SF?
Hope SF sites.
Yeah, but what was...
What is your vision for increasing the life chances of Black youth in Hope SF sites?
Workforce development, economic development. And let me just say that in this budget, that the mayor just gave this board of supervisors, 40% cut in economic development investment. And the best, we're talking about crime, the best way to stop crime is to give somebody a job. Invest in our people, give people jobs. And not just in the building trades, but in biotech, in everything. I mean, you can't just be, it's become this very simple, like the only place there's a chance is the building trades. That's nice, but it's not the be all and end all.
Thank you very much, Supervisor. What are all the major stores, why are all the stores, major stores leaving San Francisco, Bay Area malls included, and how can we prevent all the small businesses from being terrorized? This is a small business question.
Yeah, so as to, well, that's a small business and a big business question. So part of what's happened at Union Square was happening before the pandemic, and it was called online retailing. But as to small businesses, number one, city's got to get out of the way. And to that end, I actually have a measure on this November's ballot that raises the gross receipts business tax threshold in such a way that an additional 2,500 to 2,700 small businesses will no longer pay 1 penny of San Francisco business tax. And issue number two is real, meaningful community policing, where people feel safe in their neighborhoods, where people are not doing retail theft. And that is all about public safety and stepping up that game with real community policing.
Thank you very much. 2 housing questions, and you may have, you can skip these if you already feel like you've already answered them. This one is actually a comment. I need housing, be on waiting list forever. If the people that homeless are going onto the vacant unit, I love SF, born and raised. If I don't get this place soon, I would have to move out of state with my daughter. Please help.
Yeah, and if somebody wants to just contact me afterwards, and I can go try to have my folks run down where that application's at and what's been going on. But one thing that this country has to do, and San Francisco's gotten a piece of this thanks to Secretary Fudge and thanks to London Breed, is more portable Section 8. I have a similar thing on this November's ballot, which is a permanent fiscal set aside for extremely low-income housing subsidies, which requires a vote of the people to permanently set aside a stream of money. It has been very controversial. It has not been widely embraced, but it is the right thing. And I have 6 votes, and it's going to be on the November ballot, and I hope you will vote for it.
Thank you. On housing equity, how will you advocate for African American communities in San Francisco for housing, jobs, and thoughts of recreation?
And recreation?
And I think it's plus thoughts of recreation. So it's like, what are your thoughts on housing equity and helping the African community in San Francisco with housing and jobs? And what are your thoughts on recreation? So one for one.
Got it. Let's see if I can do that in a minute. Again, the emphasis has to be not only on affordable housing, but affordable housing for people who live here. And part of the problem with this entire conversation, and when I said before, housing for whom? It's this government's obligation to take care of our existing population. The outmigration of African Americans in San Francisco County in the last generation has been deeply, deeply troubling. And again, the government keeps talking about who's the next generation of entrepreneurs and stuff that we're going to bring in here. Whether you're African American, whether you're Asian American, if you're Filipino, it doesn't matter. Our job is to take care of our existing population, and that requires a shift in the tone and attitudes of this government.
Thank you. All right, we're moving on to, you needed to the first 5, we have 10 more. 5 of them will be questions just about policy, and then 5 of them are kind of grouped together and how you're going to represent the Sunnydale, Biz Valley area. So policy-wise, what is your plan to grow jobs across the city where people of all incomes and criminal backgrounds can be employed? I think you may have touched on that.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm not sure how to say this. I believe in second chances. I'm getting a second chance. I don't know, and it's not like what I really love sharing in public, but I went through it, had a pretty serious alcohol problem, and My community and my family set me straight, and I'm clean and sober now. But this is all by way of saying I believe in second chances. And that's why I voted for legislation that says that the government, when we make our own hiring decisions, should not be considering your criminal background. We should be making decisions that ignore that and that show that you have promise as a city employee. And that is the tone, and that is the attitude, and that is the belief system that I have for myself. Now, you screw up a third time, we got something else coming.
You spoke about the number of police and wanting to hire more. With that, is there a plan to bring back on-site community police that were helping to keep crime down in spaces like Sunnydale and Woodrow?
Yeah, and again, this is about a resource allocation, which is we're concentrating all of our resources. By the way, don't get me wrong, I'm the District 3 supervisor. I'm the supervisor for Union Square. I'm the supervisor for downtown. I mean, so I am benefiting from this. But all of my brothers and sisters in the Excelsior and the Bayview and the Terraville are not. And my mother taught me how to share when I was a little kid. You share, you spread it around. I'm not saying that I'm going to print money and, all of a sudden be able to hire 1,000 cops or 1,000 ambassadors. But yeah, we got to share, and the communities that need it the most, that are struggling the most, actually have a disproportionate argument in favor of having more policing.
Getting tired yet?
No, I mean, I got to tell you, if you go to Union Square right now, or tonight, or yesterday, or tomorrow, there is a mobile command center in there with a lieutenant, a sergeant, 2 platoons right now. They should be on Leland Avenue.
If elected, what will be your plan to address the homeless situation, including the tents and trash around the city? Do you have a plan to help African Americans be able to own homes in the city, and how you address the crime in our city?
Yeah, I think we've touched on all of those, and I can't hit it in a minute, but yeah, I think we touched on all of that.
Yes, thank you. Looking at the crack epidemic and now fentanyl, what is your position on harm reduction?
So I can tell you, as somebody in recovery, that different people respond differently. For me, one day with a little bit of help, and that help I still am experiencing, I stopped. Other people, and I know some of them, I went to high school with some of them are dead, aren't going to get to that without a different on-ramp. So I think in some cases, harm reduction is the right way. And there was this story in the paper the other day about a guy who was going to die on the streets of the Tenderloin, and then got into a methadone program and just walked, I forget the name of the trail, the El Camino Trail, 1,000 miles in Spain. So it's different strokes for different folks.
Thank you. What is your plan to deal with the misuse of funding for the homelessness?
Let me just say this. I've always said fiscal prudence is a progressive value. And as we've spent a lot of time talking about crime, there's another crime we have not talked about, which is corruption. And there has been a lot of corruption, and it is devastating to me as somebody who has spent a lot of my adult life in public service, to see that people are basically stealing taxpayers' money for their own, greed and power and what have you, a lot of it. And it erodes public trust in the government, makes me not want to go to work. And I have proposed a inspector general for the city and county of San Francisco. San Francisco is one of the only major American cities that does not have an inspector general, and arguably is the city in America that needs one the most. And that will be on your November ballot, a position in the government with the power of search warrant and subpoena to deal with government corruption.
All right, the next 5 are kind of similar. They're all about Sunnydale and Visitacion Valley local issues. I'm going to read them all at once so you can respond to them and have as much time as you need for them.
Yeah, and let me just start before you even read them by saying, and I say this totally sincerely, I would actually like to have a relationship starting now, and hopefully if I become mayor, continuing while I'm mayor, but even if I'm not mayor, with leadership in this community as to what those things are and how to achieve them and how to incorporate them into our capital plan and in our rec and park plans. And so I would like to have that relationship, and that requires me creating a relationship with the community and understanding what those needs are, because I'll be the first person to tell you, I don't know. You have to tell me. I need to listen, and you need to educate me.
Thank you. So how dedicated are you to pushing funding into lower income neighborhoods such as Sunnyvale, number one?
Very.
Super Peskin, welcome. What is your long-term vision for our area involving community needs in the huge Baylands project underway? For example, other big projects at Candlestick Park and Executive Park seem to have languished for years or even decades. True. Not all districts. Sorry.
Yeah, let me just say, as we develop, it is also very important that we develop in a way where folks don't get pushed out. And so, and that's also, Pastor, part of the reason I get the anti-development rap, because I say, yeah, I'm down with development. I'm down with economic growth, but it's got to be done in a way where we don't wake up in 10 years and say, where did they all go? So, and the way to do that is with the community, not against the community.
Not all district supervisors are involved in the communities they represent. How will you ensure residents in Sunnydale, especially, are being heard properly and being represented at the Board of Supervisor meetings?
Let me say this as a supervisor who, as Jessica knows, because she works in District 3 where I live and work, that I am very, very, very involved in the communities that elected me. And that's why I've been reelected. I've been elected by the people of District 3 5 times. And without imposing myself, I sometimes give my brothers and sisters on the Board of Supervisors a little advice about how they can better engage with folks. And I offer sometimes, without imposing on them, to accompany them and to mentor them. Some are more interested than others. But one thing that has been missing in my experience, this was true under almost every mayor that I have served with, is that there has not been a tone of collaboration from mayors to supervisors to help those supervisors be the best they can be. And I want to be a mayor who makes supervisors not their enemy, not their opponent, but come together. I want to be able to say, hey, I'm Mayor Peskin. Shaman, let's go to Viz Valley together. I want to come to that community meeting. You know, Supervisor so-and-so, let's go to Chinatown together. I want to come to that community meeting. I don't want it to be as though I'm your boss or I'm your second guesser or I'm distant. I want to be your partner. And that has been missing in the tone at City Hall for as long as I've been around. I want to change that tone.
Given the fact that Visitacion Valley has been neglected of many services and resources, what changes will you make?
Yeah, and again, that is about this community using its power with somebody who welcomes the exercise of that power. I mean, it's interesting to me. Here, Mike and I were on Potrero Hill Friday. Was that Friday? And these people are organized. They're well-to-do. They're good people. They care about their community. And they know exactly what they want. They want $10 million for the renovation of Jackson Park. Now, Jackson Park's a beautiful park, and it deserves $10 million for renovation. But these people are on a mission, and I want Viz Valley and VVCU to say, this is our shopping list. This is what we want. And so that every supervisor who comes along, in 2 years, you're going to have a new supervisor. Shamal's going to be turned out. That person's got to, take that pledge. These are the 3 top things that I want to get for Viz Valley in, 2026. That's how it works. And I want to be the mayor who says, yeah, let's tick that list off.
Thank you so much. So this is one last question, you guys. We made it. We have 5 minutes left, so I don't know how you would like to use that time. So there we go. We'll swap back.
And let me say this, Pastor. I'll come back. Russell, I'll come back. It just takes 19 minutes.
You still have 2 minutes. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So this last question.
No, the 8 takes longer.
Is my question.
8 takes 40 minutes.
Will you commit to learning more about the issues of this valley and setting up by coming back for a tour or listening session? It sounds like.
Yeah, no, I would.
Yes.
Hey, can I tell you the great thing about running for mayor is it's like traveling. I mean, I'm getting to go to places that I don't normally go, and I'm learning a lot, and it's actually been a pretty heartening experience. Let me just say this about San Francisco. The people of this town are beautiful people. They are smart people. They are caring people. And I want to harness that energy and stop the division that is tearing the city apart. It really has not. Part of my view of the world is that the behavior that has become normalized by Donald Trump and these nuts is starting to make everybody in America think that that is normal behavior. It is not normal behavior. We are better than that. We can rise up above that, and we can come together and show San Francisco, show the world that San Francisco is better than that. And that's, I mean, let's stop with this doom and gloom, and let's talk about how we are going. I don't like the political line when people go, our best days are yet to come. Let's figure out how we're going to work together to make our best days come.
Okay, I'll show you in 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. This has really been enlightening for me. I really am appreciating this conversation.
Likewise.
And the questions that are coming forward. So, rent control. I know that, well, my understanding is pretty much across the board, all the candidates are pro-rent control and pro-rent control expansion. That's what I think. I'm not sure if that's true. Well, don't tell me.
Okay.
Because
right.
I'll talk to them.
Yes.
So regarding your position, I'm going to start it off by giving what I understand, that you are pro-rent control and its expansion. And so my question regarding that is, do you own residential property in San Francisco?
Yes.
All right. And so tell us how you would expand it.
So I am the only person on that stage who supports expanding rent control to the 40% of San Francisco renters who are not subject to rent control. And many people do not know this, but rent control only applies to buildings that were built before 1979. So any building that is a rental building, not an ownership building, that was built after 1979 does not have rent control. And so, you know, your 1-year lease at $2,000 expires and the landlord says now it's $4,000, totally within their rights. As compared to the pre-1979 buildings where the rent board says this year you can raise your rent by 2.3% or whatever the calculation is. There's a formula based on CPI and blah, blah, blah. And they give you your maximum rent increase that you can impose on a tenant. And if you had not asked that question, I would have offered the fact that I am a proud small landlord in North Beach and get along great with my tenants. And I believe in rent control. And you want to know what? I'm paying my mortgage on the buildings. I'm maintaining the buildings. And I'm still making money off the buildings. And they are subject to rent control. And I don't want my renters to leave so I can raise the rent. Most years, I don't even pass on that 2.3%. So it's not even worth doing the paperwork. But 40% of the people who rent in San Francisco don't have rent control at all. And I am the only person on that stage who wants to expand what my units are subject to every renter in San Francisco.
Okay. Thank you very much. Last question.
By the way, the real estate industry is not happy about that, and they're coming after me big time over that, but it's the right thing. And it's inequitable to have a two-tier system. Like, what's so special about your building because it was built in 1981 and mine was built in 1978?
All right, last question, then we're going to give you an opportunity to make a closing statement. What plans do you have to deal with tent cities, people sleeping on sidewalks and bus stops?
Yeah. So let me just say a little bit about, we're talking about choices. We're talking about an endless amount of need and a limited amount of resource. There's actually some opportunity in an economic downturn. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but there are actually things today that were out of our price range before. San Francisco has not done a good job of standing up shelter. New York City, by the way, has shelter for 85% of its homeless population. San Francisco, less than 50%. We've gone with the housing first model, very, very expensive. It's right, but it's kind of like abstinence or harm reduction. It's not an either or, it's both. And what this city needs to do is stand up a couple thousand units of shelter, all right? And let me just tell you how you get that done. And this is a true story. The city of San Francisco leases a lot of property. We lease property for our Department of Public Health. We lease property for our Department of Human Services. We lease property for all these city departments. We lease office space. Last September, our little division of real estate that negotiates these deals brought the Board of Supervisors a lease for 100,000 square feet of city office for $64.60 a square foot. And I looked at that lease. The Board of Supervisors has to approve it. I looked at that lease. Usually we approve these things. All in favor say aye, aye, next. And I looked at that lease and I was like, this looks a little high to me. And I asked Mr. Pennick, who runs that department, to bring me his appraisal. And I was like, it's too high. So we rejected it. I stood up at the Board of Supervisors. I said, colleagues, I've been around for a long time. Listen to me. This is too high. We rejected it. Okay. Last month, we entered into the replacement lease for 100,000 square feet. By the way, next door at 1145 Market Street for $29.95 a square foot. Saved the city $21 million. And yeah, I went home and told my wife I was really proud and whatever. But the reason I'm telling you this story is that this is actually the time, with all of these vacancies, where we can invest in that. And it's inhumane for these people to be on the street. Now, if you don't want to get off the street and I'm giving you a bona fide offer of shelter, it's time to go. But right now, I cannot look in your eyes and say, hey, I've got a place for you to sleep tonight. Because mostly I don't. And the answer to that is, let's go invest some of that savings. Let's go renegotiate expensive leases. Let's save some money and let's stand up 2,000 units of shelter.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Your closing statement.
My closing statement is that let's not buy into the doom and gloom. Let's buy into having San Francisco be a city that works. Let's buy into having San Francisco be a city that cares about one another again. Let's be a city that actually upholds San Francisco values, the values of taking care of people who deserve taking care of. That is the city that I want to be a part of. That is the city that I want to help lead and make function. I want San Francisco employees, department heads, rank and file folks to want to go to work. I want them to be the best they can be. I want to create a sense of collaboration, a sense of shared purpose, that we are on a mission to make this city shine again. I want to change the narrative about San Francisco. And I believe that the best way to change that narrative, and I know this is going to sound egotistical, is to elect me as the next mayor of the city and county of San Francisco. I want to partner with you. I want to come back. I want to meet with your leadership. I want to meet with members of this community. I want to understand what Viz Valley needs and deserves more. And there is plenty of time between now and November for me to do that on at least if not more occasions. So I am and pride myself on being the most accessible elected official in San Francisco. When you open your doors to me, I look forward to walking in.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for participating in democracy. I mean it.
Thank you, everybody that came out today to spend your time. Thank you very much for your participation, your questions, and thank you, Supervisor, for your time as well.
Thank you, Pastor.
Everybody have a great day.
Thank you, Pastor.